she wasn't delivering pies anymore, 'cause I don't know. She said it was terrible. And you know how long it would take a poor lady with a wood stove to make a lemon pie from scratch when you didn't have any ingredients, barely enough to make the one set. I never did hear what happened, but after that storm, she said her dad, it blew so hard the windows blew out of the old house they were living in, and he took his big, heavy army raincoat, and she said that she and Emil held it over the windows, and he nailed it to so the wind wouldn't just go in and blow them completely away. And her mother said after that, "I'm going home. You can stay if you want to. I'm taking Emil and I'm gone." So she gets on the train and goes home. And Josephine was taking a business course in Pensacola, and she would catch rides. She and Anna Dusek, a neighbor girl that was real pretty, would catch the egg truck. They'd either catch Mr. Holtz or Mr. Sunday to Mobile, Pensacola, and they would ride over there, and they'd walk to wherever the business school was, 20th Century, and finish their typing. Of course, neither one of them had done high school, but they got their diploma, and she could type like a cutter. So then she got a job in Bay Minette, and she moved up there, and then she got a job in Mobile, and Joe wanted to see her, so he went over there and he began to sell. Nobody wanted to buy anything, but he was selling ladies' hosiery. Well, he went door to door, and I don't know how he did. Didn't starve, though, but when she went back north with her dad, he followed and went later. Went to get a job and didn't have any trade, any talent, so they asked him if he could weld, and he said, "Yeah, I can weld." So he had watched him a little bit, and he got hired on at Chrysler, and he worked there till he retired. And he was building Fruhoff trailers, big trailers. And so then the next one come along. I've already told about Elizabeth, Joe and Elizabeth. Then Jim. And he wanted to see the world a little bit, so he went. He was a good little farmer, and he went with John Zollicofer out west because he wanted to see California. And they drove a load of furniture all the way to California for Mr. Willock, and they hitchhiked home. So it was quite an experience, I think. But they had a real good time. Got him in. They dressed up as one of these picture places with a 10-gallon hat and a kerchief and pistols on their sides. I just gave that one picture to John's daughter because I thought, and the other one I sent to Mert's kids. But then he went to Ohio later. On the way up, he was hitchhiking, and he got picked up for vagrancy because they were sleeping in a railroad car, and he was taken to jail. And he wrote us from jail, but like, we opened the letter, we kids, and we decided that we wouldn't tell Mother that he was in jail. And she kept worrying and worrying that she didn't hear from her child. You know, what in the world where was he, and what had happened to him, and he hadn't gotten up north yet. No telephones, but they got the word back and forth. So, I don't know how we broke the news, but he had to stay 21 days, I think, or 30 days in jail. And then he got out and he finished his trip on up and stayed with Uncle Matt for quite a little while. And that's when he bought his first car. And one night he had a real bad wreck and totaled the car, and he wanted to put the fire out, so he burned his hands and kept limping around trying to put the fire out, and he had a broken leg all the while, badly broken. And so he had to stay in a brace a long time. But he told Joy in a story once that the cops wanted to get him for being drunk, and he said he got that cop by the necktie and pulled him down. He said, "Smell my breath." He said, "I have not been drinking." And he didn't have to go to jail over that one, but he lost his car. And then the cousins, no, Joe and Josephine picked him up and brought him home when they came from Michigan to visit. They picked him up in Ohio and brought him down. They went to Lookout Mountain, the three of them, on the way down. And he was just so crippled he had to wear that big brace on his thigh all the way under his shoe.
Is that from the car wreck?
From the car wreck. So everybody was calling him Bent Axle. And that's what he went by. So then he got some carpenter jobs and he tried to farm, but there wasn't any money in farming.
He used to ride around on a lawnmower all over town too, right?
That was 40 years later, 50 years later. Yeah, he'd had a stroke before that. So, he could do all kind of things. He built me, one of those pictures was, he had built me a go-kart and it had a 1921 tag on it. And I was just a baby. And he'd wheel me all over in that. I guess that was one of the first go-karts they had.
Did it go pretty fast?
I was a year old. Yes,
Fast
it went
or
fast.
young?
Yes, it went fast. Let me see, what else can I tell you? Life was good.
Joyous and Charlie?
He'd built Mother a big wood box, a pretty one, painted it blue and to match the kitchen to go behind the big stove that they'd ordered from Montgomery Ward. It was a beautiful blue enamel with a reservoir. You remember that reservoir?
I always thought that was neat, and they'd scoop the hot water out of it.
And then we got a bathtub somewhere, and it was a big one. I know this, when he and Murtis got married, they went in the bathroom together, and Mother was laughing because the bathroom was right beside the kitchen or behind it, and she could hear him in there giggling and laughing. he had hooked up the water, put a barrel up at the top, and you pump the water up by force, and then the pipes galvanized went through the firebox, and the water followed it through the firebox and out the faucet. So we had running cold and hot water because he was ingenious enough to figure that out. We still didn't have electricity then for a long time. And named it the Pleasant View Farm, made a sign, and that was the name of it for a long time, and it was a pretty farm. And then Charlie. I had to think about Charlie because the first thing I remember about him was we were riding the pulley in the hay barn from one end to the other. It was 60 foot across there, and they didn't want me to ride much, but I'd cry, and then they'd say, okay, I said, I won't tell if y'all don't. So I did my turns, and there was a pile of hay that didn't get pulled up, and they were still down on the ground, and so he got Uncle Alex's old umbrella. He had a heavy-duty umbrella, and he said, I'm gonna parachute out of the barn with this umbrella. So he got the umbrella, and he got him a good, I guess, 10 miles an hour start, because it went sailing, and he jumped and held that umbrella, and it folded inside out, and he didn't get hurt real bad, but we laughed about it, and it was just a sad affair, because kids had a lot of good times in there, up that hay mow. And then another thing, he was real prissy about dressing. Slow poke you ever saw about getting ready, but he had these white suits. He had a white piqué one with pleats in the back. Hard to iron, hard to wash, and of course I could iron by that time, and started on the flat irons on the end of the table with a lot of blankets, and you heated the irons on the wood stove, and then you brought them and wiped them off with a rag, and then you started ironing, and you ironed all day just about it, except if it was mealtime you could quit. Usually didn't start till after meals, after dinner, but this one time after he got about 18, I guess, maybe a little bit more, he had a red necktie and he had a date and he wanted to wear this white suit. And he says, would I iron his necktie? And I said, yeah, sure will, bring it. So he went to his room and got it and brought it. And I put the press cloth, I smoothed it out best I could because it had a knot in it where the knot was wrinkled. I had it the best I could get it. And he said, you got wrinkles in there? And I said, well, they'll come out when I steam it. Let me do it. So I said, okay. So he took the rag off, the cloth, it was steam cloth, and he hit that iron down on that red necktie. When he picked it up, black strings were going up. Goodbye necktie, and the bottom of a gas iron was ruined too. Because by that time we had gotten the gas iron, was a breeze. I was a little bit afraid of it because it had a generator and you had to pump it up and light it to make it. The mantles were in it, made it burn. Anyway, I don't know if it had mantles. The gas lamps did. I think the iron just had the generator. Well, he was always late everywhere he went. One Sunday we were driving to church. Mother went, and we had this old car. I think it was a 33. And it was, you know, it was later than that, but we were going with it, and he hit a old bridge that was on the way. The church was way back in the woods behind the school. It was called the Old Folks Home, and right beside it was the little St. Joseph's Church. So we were late and hurrying, and he hit this bridge, and Mother flew up and busted her head in the top. They had wooden frames that went across the top with like 2x2s. That were covered over with cloth. She had a hematoma on her head that wouldn't wait, and it came, of course we didn't go to church, but the car wasn't hurt, it just was a dumb accident, and that blood came down her face. It took it about a month, and it kept creeping all the way through her eye and down on her cheek. It's a big V like, we felt so bad about it, and he did too, but he always liked to drive a little bit fast, but go slow so he could drive fast, if you know what I mean. You know, hurry. And then he got in the army, went to Germany. He used to send us lots of letters. The V-mail, I was calling it emails, the V-mail. They were photographed and censored. And he'd write regularly. Julius would too. But one Christmas he wrote, and he was in the German theater, and Julius was in the Philippines at the same time. And that's about it.
No, Julius, remember one time when he came home by us, he was telling he hated the brass because they just looked out for themselves, and the common ones had to look out for, and they used to take grenades and throw them in the water and bring up the fish so that they had something to eat. Remember him telling us that?
I hadn't got to Dorothy's getting married yet.
Okay. Go ahead.
A little bit more. Well, then Julius met Frances on the train going up to, he was going in the service and she was going home to Cincinnati. That's the way I understood it. And they rode, I think, during the war. And so, she got back. When she got married, we were, what did we do? Frances got married first before Dorothy. Dorothy went up to Cincinnati to be in her wedding. And then the next year, a year after, she got married. And she wore Frances's wedding dress. And married Joe Plush. And I was helping with the wedding, and I know Mrs. Plush Mr. Plush butchered the cow that Dad gave to make the goulash, and he cut it all up in pieces, and Mama Plush and I were browning it at her house because I had to make Mary Beth's little bridesmaid flower girl dress, and it was white organdy, and it was pretty. And Mama Plush told me a lot of stories that when she said I was only 7 years old, when we were sent out, each kid had a job, and she said my job was to watch the geese. And she said they were mean. She just didn't like that job at all because she was little and they would chase her. But that's what she had to do when she was little. We had a real good time visiting, and that afternoon we got it as done as we could, and then we took everything up to the farm the next day when they were after the wedding. Then we finished it because we didn't have box space for everything. So Joe and Eleanor Kaiser came up and helped peel the potatoes and do the fixings, and we spent, another neighbor or two came in, and they were all helping peel the potatoes and cook for the wedding. And we had the band, we had the Krasnotskis play their violins and guitars and sing. And all of the friends around Alberta came to the wedding. Of course, that was a hook sight. The little old Mr. Miller, Bunny laughed about him because he was a little fella and his next door neighbor, the tailor in town, and he lived next to the Plushes, and said that little old man would, as they were serving the beer going around with a pitcher, he'd hold his glass up higher than anybody else so he'd get just another little shot. But it was a really, really nice affair. Oh, and Dad was supposed to walk up the aisle and give Dorothy away, of course, and the bouquet had been sent, and they made the bouquet, but it was wired together real tight, and I needed a carnation for Dad's lapel. They forgot to get one for him. So we got one loose, and we were trying to put it in the lapel of his coat, and he said, "I'm not wearing a coat. It's hot, summertime." Dorothy said, "Oh, yes, you are." So the poor darling put that heavy coat on and wore it, and everything went well, I think. Of course, one of the old Krasnotsky boys fell asleep under the old washing machine on the porch. There was a wringer washer that was on the porch, and he couldn't take it. He fell asleep. And then they lived with the folks until the filling station was renovated a little bit, and then they moved in there, and it was their whole wonderful home, like ours was ours. And
so I remember, I don't know how, of the two kids, Ed and I stayed there in that little house. Dorothy and I canned up the store. And one time Joe came home from some kind of a church meeting, and we had canned all these tomatoes, and it was so hot. And then it started to rain, so we took a plastic tablecloth and draped it over the clotheslines. And when Joe pulled in, her and I were sitting underneath there having beer. Mother and I said, "What is going on?" We
Tell
had
me.
it.
Go ahead.
Well, no, and we just, did all these silly things. And then the one time the nuns came from down the road, I don't know what kind of was a convent or
I
what.
think it was across the bridge.
Yeah, and she delivered this bushel full of figs.
My
Your mother got the guilt. We got to preserve all these figs. Oh, my Lord, we had to run up and get more sugar, and what a mess.
takes a lot of sugar, and they're always ready on the 4th of July.
No, I don't know. That's probably when we were down there.
Well, tell me about some of the jobs you've had over the years.
Oh, the jobs. I never intended to work. I was just a little mother for the first few years, and used to take one of the old fishermen. I told her that when they had his 100th year party sometime back, we just had those 4 rooms, and the door opened right into the living room, but you could see the front door had it hooked, but the screen was on it. And cool air in the afternoon. Nice girls took a bath because you were stinking if you didn't. And the kids had their bath and been put to sleep for a nap, and I was using their water because you had to pump it and throw it out. So I was getting my bath facing south, Here came this knock on the door. Margaret? Well, I tried to shrink down in there. I said, yes, Sam. He said, oh, I didn't see anything but your back. And I said, I wondered how he could be looking me right in the eye and see my back. I hadn't figured that out yet.
Is there a mirror behind you?
No. But he was a nice gentleman, and he just wanted to deliver a message about when they were going fishing the next day. So that job I didn't get on. I used to like to go with the same crew. But then, the kids were getting up pretty good size. We used to have quilting parties around here. And Grandma and I would quilt. I never was a good quilter, but I liked the gossip and the food. And I'd clean up afterwards. So this other job, then Lillian, we went over. It was over here at her old big house, the one that's been moved, and that was, gee whiz, in 1939, I guess. After they built the big store in nearly 50, I was still just a nice little homemaker. Fix lunches and all that stuff, drive Grandma to Foley. And she wanted to know if I could come to work at the store and help out sometimes. And I said, well, I guess I could. And first address for work, I had sundresses. The kids were all still in school. And made sundresses out of feed sacks. Everybody had them. And I had sandals. And by nightfall, my feet were so tired because I didn't know you had to be on concrete floor all day long. But that was my first job, and I didn't get very much pay for that, but I was good. I had to clean shelves and stock groceries, and once in a while they let me handle the cash register, but she's always at the register until later years. And then when they built the better store, I worked in that, did quite a little bit, and I was a butcher. So then they built the one on the beach, and after 2 years of that, they had a big fish market up at the canal, and I managed the store over there in the summertime, and my girls helped me. Mary Beth and Joy were only like 11 and 13, but they helped me so I could not leave them home alone, and they paid her a little pittance. And Lil was in Mobile pretty shortly after that. She graduated and went to Berkeley Field to work. And then after that managerial job, what did I do next? I worked at the fish in the processing plant. I learned how to head shrimp, pack them. And the thing I didn't like was getting on the grader. When I got on that treadmill this morning, that I said, I can't do this too long because everything feels like it's moving with you. So I soon learned to get in the weighing position where I could scoop the baskets and hand them to Miss Annie Mae. She'd weigh them because that was an easier job than going and getting shrimp. And worked there with her a long time, well, a few years. And then we got a boat, and I went shrimping with Bunny. Told Lane I was going to quit and go with him on the boat, and she went and she bought me all kind of fancy nightwear and stuff. She's good about bribing. And I just went to Mobile with her, and we traded it in, and for what she spent for one outfit, I got us each one, because that's the kind of things that I liked. Barbizon instead of satin for summertime. But then I went with Bunny on the shrimp boat, and I guess that was the best job I had. Except, I don't know how we didn't starve to death, because I read a log just recently, and if we weren't broke down, we couldn't find any, day in and day out. And we had the wrong size of nets always. because you had to change them to the season had changed, and the shrimp were little, and you couldn't catch them. Couldn't have your nets real little, so if they strained through, that was just tough. But we caught live bait one day on the big boat, though. It's 40 foot. We bought it. It was just exactly what we wanted. It was $3,000. Ready to go. This was about in April, maybe May. And Dick was in the family by then, and he was a good carpenter. So Bunny got see if he would help him put a comfortable cabin on there. Well, they invited me to come up and see. I thought we were going to be ready to go. We were not ready to go. When I went up to look, there was 3 2x4s standing on the deck. They had designed it and were ready, and the floor was all in. But they had, when I went up there, I was just disgusted and sick. But they made me a real nice little cabin with a double bunks in the back and a table and lockers, and I had a little sewing table thing. That's what kept me sane, and a place I could lay down and read nightfall. Well, about the first month we were out there, something real bad went wrong with the generator, and then something went bad with we had a diesel in it, and it had to go to the doctor. And then when it was real cold mornings, it wouldn't start, and you had to give it ether and make it start. Then we'd go, and then the rainstorms would be bad. But then the sunsets and the sunrises were just wonderful, and I had time to mess around and got my first lesson. Though the first week I was on there, I wore a muumuu because I thought it was a nice, bright, shiny one, and I wanted to be covered at all times in the morning. So shrimpers going back and forth. So I went out with my toothbrush and brushed my teeth, and I had real good luck. I spit in the water and rinsed my mouth and toothbrush out, and everything was great. They went well. We caught a few. That next morning I went to do it again. The wind had switched, and I didn't know it, and I went out to brush my teeth again, and man, I got it right back in my face, the whole smuts, and I got laughed at because I didn't know which way the wind was blowing from. But I learned pretty soon. And the one day that I guess we had really, really good luck, we went up to Fairhope. We took Rusty and Francis with us one time. But we went up there and we hit the shrimp. Somebody told us where they were, and we were scooping them up. When you get a big bag full of shrimp, like 2 bushels at a time, they're pure. You don't have any trash in them. It was just a sight that I'd never seen before. You're not going to believe what happened. We were catching like crazy, and it got sundown. We ran out of ice. When you run out of ice in July, it ain't funny. So we had to come in. So the next day we went back, and guess what? There weren't any. They were gone somewhere else. And then another time we had fished, towed those skiffs around.